I'm in the big leagues, told them don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh, send it through quickly. I'm making his dog, like I'm in the big leagues. Told him that I gotta go, dog. I'm riding a road, y'all. I think that I'm back in my bag now. So I need that go, y'all. Got hits when he throwing the fastball. Just too quick for it, peeling off like the whip orange. Seen they effort, this piss poor. I got too much.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast where a basketball fan with zero basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I am your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, aka AA Ron. And ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump right into it. It is good to be back on another Friday. I hope wherever you are watching, wherever you are listening, the weather is nice, sun is shining, birds are chirping, all that good stuff. Let's jump right into the episode. So I realized last week I forgot to give a Black History trivia question. So to make up for it for this week, so I only got this episode and next week's episode for shows for February. I am going to give two Black History trivia questions, which I will reveal the answers at the end of the episode. So the first question that I want to ask, who is the first Black coach to win a championship in all of North American pro sports? First Black coach to win a championship in all of North American pro sports. I think the answer probably won't surprise you, but it's pretty interesting stat nonetheless. And then the second question that I want to ask, that I will reveal at the end of the episode, who is the only NBA player to be top 10 in these three categories: points, assists, and steals? So that's a pretty interesting one as well. Like I said, I will reveal those answers at the end of the episode, but let's jump right into it. So this weekend is not necessarily the halfway point, but it is sort of the halfway point. It's the AllStar weekend coming up this Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So in order to, I guess I'd say honor or make this a little All-Star Game edition episode, I wanted to talk about a few things in relation to the All-Star Game and the All-Star weekend as a whole. So episode might be a little bit shorter than it normally is, but it's the All-Star weekend, it's the All-Star break. The NBA players are going on a break. I can take a little break too. But what I want to do is give my personal all-time All-Star Game starting five. So this isn't my all-time starting five like, in the NBA as a whole, like, regular season and playoffs. This is strictly when it comes to all-star teams and all-star performances in the past. So my all-time starting five in terms of all-stars. So let's talk about it. So obviously, if you're an NBA Hoops fan, the All-Star Game is composed of two guards, two forwards, and a forward/center that makes up that five position. So let's talk about it. So this is my All-Star Game all-time starting five. So at guard, for my first guard position, give me Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant, obviously one of the greatest players that we had ever seen. Obviously a legend, not just for the Los Angeles Lakers, but the NBA as a whole. The closest thing that, we had seen to Michael Jordan, I would say. But Kobe Bryant has the most All-Star Game, tied for the most All-Star Game MVPs. He has four of them, tied with Bob Pettit from back in the day, way back in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. But he has the most consecutive, or at least had the most consecutive until another guy, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, the most consecutive All-Star Game selections with 18 All-Star selections in his career, which is pretty incredible. He is now currently second in starts with 15, second most points ever scored in All-Star Game history with 290, but he still to this day holds the record for the youngest All-Star at only 19 years old. I don't know if we'll probably see that again, in the future, but that is a crazy stat. 19 years old, already considered one of the best players in NBA history. But Kobe Bryant at the guard position. Like I said, Kobe Bryant is an all-time great. Obviously, we all miss him dearly, in terms of you're in the, the NBA, if you're an NBA fan, you grew up watching Kobe Bryant. Like, Kobe Bryant was definitely a staple as a kid, and as I got older and became an adult. And so we all miss Kobe Bryant. But definitely I have to have him on my all-time All-Star game starting five. But the other guard position that I want to give I want to put on my team is Michael Jordan, of course. Who else could it have been? Michael Jordan is a 14-time All-Star game selection, so making an All-Star team 14 times, 3 All-Star game MVPs, and Michael Jordan was, surprisingly enough, we all know Michael Jordan to be a scorer, right? An assassin when it comes to, scoring the basketball. But he actually had the first ever triple-double in the All-Star game. And it was 1997, so towards the tail end of his career. So the All-Star game started back, way back in the 60s or something like that. I can't remember the exact year that it started. But no one had ever scored a triple-double. Not even the great Oscar Robertson had scored a triple-double in the All-Star game. It was Michael Jordan that scored the first one. So, with a backcourt of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, first of all, ain't nobody stopping them from scoring the basketball. Second of all, there ain't no guard scoring on them. So, I feel pretty good about that in terms of all-time All-Star selections. Kobe and MJ, give me them as my guards. Let's move on to the forwards. This is going to be a pretty obvious one. Forward, you got to give me LeBron James. LeBron James, currently this year, 2022 All-Star game, will be his 18th consecutive All-Star game selection, which 18 years in a row, that is insane. He's in year 19, didn't make the team his rookie year, but he's made 18 straight and started in every single one of those games. Has never come off the bench, which, obviously deservedly so. But he is the youngest, still holds the record for the youngest All-Star game MVP. In 2006, he won it at just a young 21 years old. I remember watching that, and I'm like, well, it's this guy's league now. I was 11, I believe. Yeah, and that was the year the Miami Heat won the championship. Yeah. So, been watching LeBron James for a long time. He's also got 3 All-Star game MVPs, just like Michael Jordan. I could definitely see him wanting to get another one before his career wraps up. But you got to give me LeBron James. I always tell people I am a certified LeBron James hater, but I will... sorry about that. I am a certified LeBron James hater, but at the end of the day, respect is given where respect is due. LeBron James, if he's not in your top 5, you don't know basketball. So I got to have LeBron James on my team for all-time All-Star game selections. But the other forward spot, this one was a little bit tougher. I could have went a few different directions, but after looking at all-time All-Star game stats, I had to give a slight edge to Kevin Durant. So Kevin Durant has 11 All-Star game selections, a 2-time All-Star game MVP. He is actually second in points per game totals with 25 points for All-Star games, and has scored 250 points over his 11 All-Star game selections. So I thought that was pretty impressive. With Kevin Durant on my team, my forwards, LeBron and Kevin Durant, ain't nobody stopping us. Kevin Durant, obviously we know him as arguably the greatest scorer the NBA has ever seen. Like I said, arguably, but definitely one of the most dynamic players that has ever graced an NBA basketball court. So I definitely had to choose him as my other forward for the All-Star game. But in terms of my final spot for my all-time All-Star game starting 5, I had to give the final spot to Big Diesel, a.k.a. Superman, Shaquille O'Neal. So Shaquille O'Neal, as I was putting the research together for the show, 15-time All-Star. 15-time All-Star game selection, 3-time All-Star game MVP. Oh my gosh, I can't even read my handwriting. So you had to have Shaq. He was a staple. He was a staple in the All-Star game pretty much throughout his entire career. You had to have Shaq on the All-Star team. He was even if he wasn't putting up the best numbers, which for his stretch when he was dominant, he was putting up crazy numbers, but you had to have Shaq on the team. There's just no way. He's too big of a personality. Even to this day, he's too big of a personality. If you don't know basketball, you still know Shaq. But as I was looking through his statistics for the All-Star game, He has 202 total points in the All-Star game. So I had to have Shaq as my forward/center in the final spot of my All-Star all-time starting five. So I feel pretty good about this team. I feel pretty good. Like Kobe, MJ, LeBron, KD, and Shaq, like not a whole lot of holes in this team. You could make the argument three-point shooting is not that great, but I mean, like, when you got a team like this, like, who's stopping them from getting to the rim? Who's stopping us from mid-range? Who's stopping us with the turnaround fadeaway? Who's stopping, Shaq dunking on everybody? Like, I feel like this is a pretty solid team when it comes to all-time All-Star game starting five. But let's transition a little bit to the league as it is right now. So into the All-Star break, I want to talk about some of the hottest teams. I also want to talk about some of the hottest players going into the break this Friday. So first team I want to give a shout out, highlight to, is my second favorite team, my Eastern Conference favorite team, Boston Celtics. So the Boston Celtics have won 7 of their last 8 games. They went on a 7-game win streak, losing to, I think, the Pistons by 1 point in a tough game, which Pistons are terrible. But anyway, they have beaten a really, really good stretch of teams during this win streak. They beat the Charlotte Hornets. They beat the Brooklyn Nets. They beat the Philadelphia 76ers by like darn near 50 points or whatever it was. And they've beaten the Denver Nuggets. So the Boston Celtics have had a really good month of February, and going into the All-Star break, having some pretty good momentum after having a very slow start and me getting onto them earlier in the season. So shout out to the Boston Celtics for turning things around. Other team that has remained hot pretty much the entire season, but especially in the month of February, the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix Suns have an 8-1 record as it stands right now, as I'm recording this Thursday night. They have an 8-1 record in the NBA, beating some really good teams during that stretch. Milwaukee, Chicago, Brooklyn, as well as Philadelphia. So Phoenix Suns have been rolling. They are still number 1 in the Western Conference. My way too early season prediction to win, the Western Conference, I did have them losing, I think, to a fully loaded Brooklyn Nets team, but obviously that's changed now. So I'll make more predictions as we get to the actual playoffs because, we'll have a better sample size of what's going on. But the Phoenix Suns have been playing incredibly well. Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, all of them have been playing phenomenally well. It's nice that they're going into the All-Star break. I know Chris Paul does have injured his hand in the game yesterday. I'm blanking on who they played yesterday, but he did injure his hand. Hopefully it's not super serious. I think he's scheduled to have an MRI that I just saw, but they had a really, really good stretch. And there's actually 2 teams that have also been 6-1 this February, and that is the Utah Jazz and the Memphis Grizzlies. They've both been 6-1. The Jazz had a pretty significant losing streak to start the new year in February. They went like 1-11 or 1-12, some crazy stat like that. But they have won their last 6 of 7 games, losing to the Los Angeles Lakers just the other night. So they have definitely turned it around. Donovan Mitchell does have an ankle injury that he has been kind of dealing with for a good portion of the season. He did leave that Lakers game early, part of the reason why the Lakers ended up coming back and winning that game. But Donovan Mitchell has been dealing with an ankle injury, so I'm sure, I don't know if he's scheduled. I think as of right now, he's still scheduled to play in the All-Star game, but had some injuries going into the All-Star weekend, which sucks, so maybe they'll name some more replacements. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But the Memphis Grizzlies, like I said, 6-1 in February, have pretty much stayed hot the entire year. They are still 3rd in the Western Conference, only a game and a half back behind the Golden State Warriors. So they have definitely exceeded my expectations, or probably exceeded their own expectations, but they have had a really, really good month of February as well. But let's transition again. Like I said, I wanted to talk about some of the hottest players in the NBA heading into the All-Star break. So I wanted to highlight 3 players. This is really kind of the MVP race, in my opinion, as well, between these 3 players. So you have Nikola Jokic, who throughout 8 games in February, averaging 25.8 points, 14.3 rebounds, and 8.3 assists. Like, crazy, crazy numbers, NBA 2K numbers there. I still am amazed every time I watch this man play basketball. Definitely one of my favorite players to watch, having an incredible month of February with that stat line. Another player, Giannis Antetokounmpo, having a really, really solid February too. Out of 6 games, averaging 33.7 points per game, 11.5 rebounds, 7 assists. Now, this was even crazier, I thought. I mean, not out of the realm of scope for the way he plays, but he's 66% field goal percentage. That is insane. That's NBA 2K numbers right there. And shooting a very respectable 72% from the free throw line. We know that's been his, Achilles heel, although he did have that 17 of 19 game in the finals last year. Giannis has been phenomenal from the free throw line. According to what he has done in the past, 72% for him is not bad. But third player also playing 6 games this February is Morant. 29.8 points, 7.3 rebounds, and 7.3 assists, 5.2 rebounds. Morant leading the charge in Memphis, having them playing some really good basketball, calling himself the point guard. And I mean, I know the point guard is Chris Paul, but Morant, he's got a case. But these three are kind of, doing this when it comes to the MVP race, especially Jokic and Giannis. If I had to choose out of the three right now, it would be really, really, really tough. I think I would give just a slight edge to Giannis as of right now, leading the MVP race. But I mean, if Jokic ended up getting it, I wouldn't be opposed to that one bit. So those are some of the hottest teams in the NBA. Those are some of the hottest players going into the All-Star break as well. But I'll transition a little bit. No, not a whole lot of news around the association. But I had to talk about my San Antonio Spurs at one point. So Spurs coach Gregg Popovich, I have it pulled up right here, passes Lenny Wilkens for number 2 all-time on the coaching wins list. Says the longtime Spurs coach is now just 3 wins away from passing Don Nelson for number 1 all-time in NBA coaching victories. I mean, this is pretty impressive. He currently is at 1,333 victories. That's insane. His total win percentage, I believe, was his career win percentage is 66% right now, which is insane. I mean, I have all the accolades, 5 championships, a gold medal this year when basically the whole country said he couldn't do it. I remember that. I remember y'all were talking bad about Coach Pop, but obviously I know I'm biased as a Spurs fan, but he's the greatest coach. He's the greatest coach the NBA has ever seen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Better than Phil Jackson. Better than Don Nelson. Better than, all these other coaches. Jerry Sloan. Better than Pat Riley. I don't care. I'm standing on that hill. Gregg Popovich is the greatest coach we've ever seen in the NBA. But that's neither here nor there. That's just my opinion. Obviously, this is an opinion show. But last thing that I want to talk about is marquee matchups for the weekend. Obviously, no games on Friday and Saturday. Only game on Sunday is the All-Star game. So you have Team LeBron and Team Durant going head-to-head this weekend. In terms of who I think is going to win, I mean, with LeBron choosing first, I mean, he's been the captain for the past, how many years they've been doing this now? 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken? 3 or 4 seasons. He hasn't lost. His starters are Steph, DeRozan, LeBron, Giannis, and Jokic. Just off his starters alone, Team LeBron should win this game. Obviously, there's no Kevin Durant for Team Durant. And you got Trae Young, John Morant, Jason Tatum, Andrew Wiggins, and Joel Embiid. Really, really solid players. I know my boy DeJounte Murray is on Team Durant coming off the bench for the reserves. But, Team LeBron should win this game. You got a team of Steph, LeBron, Giannis, and the reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic. You shouldn't lose that game. So I will be going with Team LeBron for this game. Oh, and last week, if you remember correctly, I had the Celtics beating the Nuggets. I also had the Warriors beating the Lakers, and I had the Minnesota Timberwolves beating the Pacers. So another back-to-back weekend of 3 in a row, or a clean sweep for my marquee matchups. I'm bringing my winning total, or my season total to 22-11. Pretty solid if I do say so myself. But marquee matchups, like I said, for the weekend, I've got Team LeBron beating Team Durant for this year's All-Star game. But before I end the show, I got to give you the answers for my Black History Trivia. So we got to get to that real quick. So if you remember, the first question I asked was, first black coach to win a championship in all of North American pro sports. And that is none other than Bill Russell, winning the 1968 NBA championship. actually doing it as a player coach. So if you remember, if you're a basketball historian like myself, he was a player coach for Boston from 1966 to 69, which is pretty crazy. So he was out there coaching as well as playing, like basically what LeBron does right now. But I thought that was pretty crazy stat, pretty cool. Bill Russell, the first black coach to win a championship in all of North American pro sports. And the second question I had, the only NBA player to be top 10 all time in points, assists, and steals is none other than LeBron James. LeBron James is top 10 in all those statistical categories, 3rd in points, 7th in assists, and 10th in steals, which is pretty impressive. LeBron, obviously, like I said, LeBron, one of the greatest players we have ever seen, definitely in my top 5 all time, I would say. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all the show I have for you folks today. As I always say every week, if you're watching, subscribe. If you're listening, subscribe, all that good stuff. Like the channel on socials, we're on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and all that good stuff. I hope you have a great weekend. We'll be watching the All-Star Game festivities this weekend. And I hope you do all the things you get to want to do. Stay safe, and I will see you next Friday for the final show in February. Take care.
But they all in a rest. Had a few friends, but they suck in the past. I don't even trip when I'm thinking about that. Hopped in the whip and we all in play. Shawty wanna ride to the hop in the back. 0 to 100, seen a rap on the dash. They ain't catching up, dog, I'm moving too fast. I'm in the big leagues, told her don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh, send it through quickly. I'm making his dog, like I'm in a big league.